Hello YouTube, Robin here for the Project YouTube channel. This video is about the Paradoxica build. I made a video back. Today it's updated a lot, the build changed very much and I would like to talk about that. So let's quickly show what the build does now in maps. This is a palace map, not too hard. Ally weakness apparently. So while I map, I shield charge and I use Vortex. Since Vortex instantly casts, you can place Vortexes while you shield charge. So the build is not really an auto bomber, but I would still call it a herald bomber, because the Herald of Thunder and the Herald of Ice are very important. Yeah, so unlike classic Vortex builds, well, the damage over time really helps. Once enemies are frozen, the damage over time can still kill them, and then you kill frozen enemies, but we actually mainly use the initial hit of Vortex. We just use Vortex because it's really strong and because you can do it instantly. As you can see, like right now I'm standing here, I'm going to shield charge here, and in the middle I'm using a Vortex. The reason why my Vortexes are this big is partly because of the skill tree, but also because of my unique chest carcass jack, but I will talk about my gear after this quick map showcase. Okay, here's. So this is the Dominus Boss from Act 3. It's mainly lightning damage. So right now I'm using elemental hit, and as you can see, like, he's frozen. I can keep him in this phase if I want to. So during bossing I use elemental hit for single target, and during the elemental hit, as you can see here, I keep pressing Vortex. That's for extra DPS. The Vortex initial hit and the damage over time also hits the boss. He still does the slam. So the DPS from ally hit is really good, and on top of that I can keep using Vortex. So that's really good for single target. So I use the Vortex as well, not only for clear, but as well for single target on bosses. I can just do them because they are instant. I can do them. See, I freeze this tier 14 Dominus, no problem. He didn't move at all, no danger. Well, I'm not going to clear the map. I showed the clear and the boss. So now I will quickly go over how this character is built. So as I already said, this is a Paradoxica Herald bomber build, but I like to call the build Paradoxicold. First and foremost, my gear. This is the unique sword Paradoxica. It has increased cold damage, as you can see, attack speed and chance to freeze. As you can see, well, not as you can see, there are other options for this build. You can also use Doriana's Catalyst, in my opinion. It will also just work fine, but this one I use because the chance to freeze is really nice on my Herald of Ice, so that when stuff shatters, well, all my cold damage has chance to freeze extra, so that's a really big quality of life. And the mod, the topmost mod, as you can see, attacks with this weapon deal double damage. That's where most of my damage is coming from the elemental hit for the single target DPS. Right here you can see 40 to 44k DPS, but you shouldn't look at the number. The damage is way higher than this because of multiple reasons. Because like in the, like, I will talk about the chest now then, I guess. The carcass jack, it's not necessary for the build, but it's a huge quality of life because of the carcass jack, the Herald of Ice and the vortexes become huge, and that's really good for clear. As you could see in the map, when I was moving around, I cleared big packs all at once, so that's really nice. And why you shouldn't look at the DPS of elemental hit, there are a lot of hidden modifiers that don't show on the DPS. First, as you can read, like, where is it? Between all this text, yeah, the last one. Oh, excuse me, the last one. 10% more damage per elemental ailment on the enemy. So when you're attacking bosses, as you could see in this palace map, I permafroze Dominus, so that's already 10% more. So that's times 1.1, and then in our links we use elemental damage with attacks. That's really important. And this one you do see on the tooltip DPS, elemental hit, minus level 21. I got lucky to buy this one. This rootless support gem is really good for DPS, and that doesn't show on the tooltip. So this one doesn't show on the tooltip. Gold penetration is really good for bossing, doesn't show on the tooltip. Faster attacks is really nice for quality of life, because if you're hitting something and you have to flee, you don't want to be stuck in place. That's also why I don't use multi-strike. Then the last one, Hypothermia, is more damage against enemies with chill and stuff. Anyways, this also doesn't show on the tooltip. So this tooltip doesn't show 10% more damage and doesn't show two of these links. Also doesn't show elemental overload. So elemental overload from the skill tree, so that's another 40% more damage. And I guess the single target, since I keep spamming vortex, you should also think about that for the single target. Well, anyways, the tooltip doesn't matter. You saw at the boss, he went down pretty fast and comfortably. Next item in my build is the Devouring Diadem. This helmet is really nice. It's my favorite unique of this league. Well, I can quickly read. I have a very expensive one, a corrupted one for +2 level of AoE gems. I use my heralds in this helm. So I have Herald of Ice, Ice Bite, Herald of Thunder, and Empower. This gives me right now, with a level 3 Empower, gives me level 27 Herald of Ice and level 27 Herald of Thunder. The Ice Bite is for freeze chance, frenzy charges, and more cold damage. It's really nice. And I'll quickly show you the mod. As you can see, trigger level 15 Feast of the Flesh every 5 seconds. It's really nice. I'm really glad I discovered this before the helm. Well, I don't know how much the helm costs right now, but it was really cheap when I discovered it. I'll show you quickly what it does. This level 15 Feast of Flesh every 5 seconds. So I'll let them. Ah, damn it! I can't show it. Wait. No gloves. Anything else I do automatically? I don't think so. God damn it! God damn it! Okay. Now I'll have to wait for Herald of Thunder to stop. And because of this Feast of Flesh mod on the helmet, I slot Desecrate with cast 1 damage taken. Here, cast 1 damage taken and Desecrate. I do this so that when I take damage, corpses get laid around. It's most important in boss rooms. Okay, look when I take damage. Okay, so you see I'm taking damage. Yeah, well, of course there are no corpses now. Can I quickly change something around here? Cast 1 damage taken and Desecrate. Okay. Okay, so I'm laying corpses, and what happens? Did you see that? So I'm taking damage, I'm laying corpses. Whoops. Every 5 seconds I get a massive big hit of heal. Boom. That's super nice in boss rooms. You can go look up a video of my previous version of the build. You can see me doing a tier 16 Hydra map with no regen. And I did not die in that map, just because every time I got hit, I became a little bit more careful, and because of the big hit, this Desecrate was laid down on the ground, and then in 5 seconds or less, I got hit. I got healed for very big chunk. How much? Well, Feast of Flesh heals per corpse. It can consume up to 10 corpses. So it's between 1 and 10 corpses. And every time it consumes, excuse me, it consumes per corpse it consumes, you get 100 life, 100 energy shield, and 100 mana. So in the best possible case, no wait, it was more than 100, I think. Yeah, it's way more. It's 400 life per corpse, 200 mana per corpse, and 400 energy shield per corpse. So in the best case scenario, you get 4000 life, 2000 mana, and 4000 energy shield every 5 seconds. In the best possible scenario. It's not always this case, but this one is really nice. This one allows us to do all no regen maps, basically. So this character can do any map mod. Chance to avoid ailments is annoying, but it can do any map mod. The one thing is, sadly enough, you cannot use this with CI builds or general energy shield builds, because it also gives you Eldritch Battery. So our mana moves, our energy shield moves to our mana bar, but that's okay. For this build it turned out to be really nice, because it saved us like it saved us 3 points, because I think I would have gone Eldritch Battery anyways, so that's okay. Okay, I showed Carcass Jack, I talked about that one, and I also showed the links. For shield we use Lycosidai. 2 reasons we use that. One, for the single target. We don't want to invest in accuracy, we just want to always hit and never miss with our sword. And it also helps with the clear. Generally, Herald of Ice and Herald of Thunder have 0% chance to crit, but Shield Charge and Vortex, they can crit. So when I do crit during the clear, I also trigger Elemental Overload. So it helps with single target and with clear to be able to crit for Elemental Overload, and that's 40% more elemental damage for like 8 seconds. It's really handy. Yeah, we have no crit chance, but I can already, we'll talk about Flasks later, but I can already show you this Cinder Swallow urn. I took the crit mod just because I have no investment in crit anywhere, but with the crit mod on this flask you get elemental overload quite often. Okay, so the shield is Lycosidai. For the amulet we use Impresence, and with Impresence we can reservate, oh, not Purity of Ice, we can reservate Frostbite for no mana, so I can do it on and off, it costs me no mana at all. Normally it's not that big of a deal, but since this build invests into a lot of AoE, this Blasphemy actually is pretty huge, so it's also really nice for the clear with Herald of Ice, so really recommend this amulet as well. This is just really good generic ring with dexterity, life, and weapon elemental damage. I don't know if this craft can go higher, I hope so, but I haven't found it yet. One thing you can see is the dex on this ring is really high. That's the one big downside actually. This build is really fun to play, it's really fast, it can do boss as well, etc. But the dex requirement of this sword is 212, and since we're a witch, it's quite hard to get all this dex, so I got 30 dex here, 30 dex here, and 49 dex on my ring. So yeah, getting dex is the only annoying part of this build. Next up is Call of the Brotherhood. In my previous version of this build I did not use this, but this ring is pretty. You could do it. You could do the build without this ring because with Ice Bite it should work. but this ring is really nice. Not only does it convert 40% of Herald of Thunder's damage to cold to get some sort of like semi-auto bomber effect, which is really nice, it also actually adds a lot of damage to elemental hit. I don't know the mechanics behind this, but it's apparently it works like this. It's the same thing if you go elemental hit but fire based. When you convert like lightning damage to fire damage, even though you don't use any lightning hits, it gets a lot bigger. So I'll show you. Like right now it's 40 or 44 depending on my elementalist ascendancy point. So without Call of the Brotherhood, it's 32 and 35. So this ring is actually really advised to use for clear as well as single target. Next up is Soundbound soldier gloves. These gloves are really cheap and they are extremely good for this build. It has a huge amount of flat cold added to the attacks, which is fantastic for Paradoxica. The life is nice, 50 cold rest, super nice. Freeze duration is actually a really underrated, really nice mod. I can easily freeze all monsters, no matter if they have increased life or not in tier 16 maps. Well, in tier 16 maps I cannot freeze the boss, of course. The only big downside, and the Herald of Ice damage on this glove is also pretty amazing. So right now, without any buffs and stuff, the average damage of Herald of Ice is 5.8 at 6.4, and without the gloves it is like 5 at 6k. So these gloves really help with Herald of Ice too. These gloves are also really advised to use in the build. The only downside of these gloves is your hits can only kill frozen enemies. And for a lot of builds this is terrible. You can be hitting on stuff and it doesn't die just because you're not freezing it. But for this build our freeze chance is through the roof, which is fantastic. And if we don't freeze, I have never noticed the downside of these gloves, because I freeze a lot, and not only that, because of the huge vortex, anything that I don't freeze still dies from the damage over time. I have never felt the downside of these gloves. Then next up is the belt. It's just a really nice Stygian vise, and I put in an Abyss Jewel with added cold damage, energy shield and life. Yeah, the added cold damage is not needed for the clear speed. It's there for the bosses, and the energy shield and life was just really nice. As you can see, it boosts my life a bit, and I felt like I was coming a bit short of energy shield, because we're also taking damages to energy shield and mana. So that's that. Life, resistances, elemental damage with attack skills. The last mod is also for the single target. And then we have the gloves, it's just life, movement speed, and resist, that's about it. For the lab enchants, helmet, I couldn't do an enchant because I have a really nice corrupted one, but there's probably enchants that's really handy for this build. You don't need the +2, you can also work with a normal devouring diadem. This is my favorite item of this league by far. For the gloves, I really recommend getting anything of spite. This is the cruel enchant. I've tried for the Uber enchant like 15 times, but I haven't hit it yet. But yeah, I guess I'll try a couple more times in the near future. But I really recommend this trigger of spite when hit. That's this one. Why do I really recommend this? Because there's a mod on Lycosidai that says adds 250 to 300 cold damage to counter attacks. That's pretty huge. That's like a really big added cold gem. But what it appears that this, in this case, Addict of Spite from Cruel Labyrinth. It's from Cruel Labyrinth, but it's still a huge amount of damage. As you can see right now, average damage of this enchant, and it's cruel enchant, so it can get like double as good, is 6 to 8k, no 8 to 9k, and that still gets doubled by Paradoxica. So every time I get hit, it gets like triggered for like 16 to 18k damage, and that also really procs Herald of Ice and stuff. So that's a really nice interaction between the gloves enchant, Paradoxica and Lycosidai. For boots right here I have the Merciless enchant for added cold damage. You don't have to go for the Uber enchant because the damage difference between Merciless and Uber is really not that big. It's only like a couple of damages. You could also go attack and cast speed when killed recently. That's really nice for clear. I really like this one because I've tested it, and the cold damage also adds to Herald of Thunder and Herald of Ice, but other enchants work perfectly as well. If you're playing really good, you don't really get hit that hard because you're freezing most of the stuff. So that was all the equipped gear. Next up is Flasks. Taste of Hate I use defensively. It's a really strong flask. Offensively doesn't help my clear. It's really good versus taking physical hits. My single target does go up a little bit, I guess. Like yeah, 41, 45 instead of 40 something. So single target goes up a little bit. It's not really that important, but late game I recommend it for defenses. The Overflowing Chalice. Why do I use this one? I guess the Consecrated Ground is nice, and probably also the 40% increased damage. And if you go fast and you use this one, you can pretty much guarantee uptime, 100% uptime of the other two. So it's just a flask that I like, I guess. It's not mandatory at all. Then Cinder Swallow. It's really strong for multiple reasons. While clearing, you might not trigger the Desecrate Corpses often, so you don't get the Feast of Flesh that often. So these, when clearing really fast, like these percentages really add up. If you jump into a pack and you kill 20 monsters, that's 60% of life you regained, and like I said before, the crit chance really helps with triggering elemental overload. Then one flask against bleeding and to regain life. I don't even use an instant flask this build just because I love Feast of Flesh from Devouring Diadem so much. And then a flask to move really quickly and also helps with the shield charge speed. That's it for flasks. I'll show my skill tree now, I guess. I haven't set it yet, but I also run Purity of Ice. Because I felt like I had little gem slots in this build. I actually got a corruption on my amulet, and the fact that I got the corruption also gives me level 23 Purity of Ice, which gives me 1 extra cold resist, so it's 80. A normal Purity of Ice level 20 would give 79, but this corruption is pretty nice and also saves me gem slots from the rest on the gear. Right, here's my shield charge setup, my heralds, my blasphemy. Here's a portal. You could also link increased AoE because Frostbite is free, reserves no mana, so you can link something that would normally increase the mana, no problem. Then I have my Desecrate with cost 1 damage taken setup for the diadem. Is really strong, and then classically Immortal Call, cost 1 damage taken, increased duration. And what's in my boots? In my boots is of course my Vortex for the quality of life in the build. That's Vortex, Control Destruction, Bone Chill, and Hypothermia. We don't scale the damage over time, so we don't use like I don't know, efficacy and stuff. So Control Destruction for the initial hit. Hypothermia is really nice, and I think the Bone Chill helps other skills with DPS as well. So this, while doing the single target, you can also spam Vortex, and then the Bone Chill will help with the damage overall and stuff. So then the skill tree. For the skill tree we need 2 combat focus jewels to convert to make sure our elemental hit is cold only. So first of all, this one stops the lightning damages. I got a lucky corruption on this one, and this one stops the fire damage. This one is the cheapest because most people want to go who go elemental hit. Most of them go a bow build and they convert everything to fire. So this one is the cheapest one to get. That's why I looked for corruption on this one against corrupting blood. This corruption is not mandatory, but I really recommend it because if you jump into a corrupting blood pack and you kill 20 monsters at once, you have all those stacks at once, and that's like the only thing that really scared me mapping from level 90 to 94. So I do recommend, it doesn't have to be on this jewel, but this jewel is the cheapest of the two mandatory ones, so this one is the best to go look it for, or maybe on a rare one. But I really do recommend this this corruption on a jewel. Then my generic jewels are attack speed for the quality of life, shield charging, this strength gives a little bit of life, I'm okay with that, and then freeze chance, chance to freeze and freeze duration are in my opinion really important mods. So get 5% chance to freeze, and the freeze duration is like an extra bonus that's really nice. I think this is my other one, yeah. Chance to freeze, attack speed with swords, cold damage, and I guess this melee damage wasn't really needed on this jewel, but it really helps with my single target for elemental hit. And then lastly, this was a little bit more expensive, but I got a really good Watcher's Eye. Why did I take this Watcher's Eye? I have not that much spots for flasks, so with this Watcher's Eye and Purity of Ice, I am immune to freezing, which is really nice because didn't really have an anti-freeze flask, so I can just open boxes blindly without getting frozen. And for the defense against physical damage, this jewel converts physical damage taken to cold damage. This is really nice together with Taste of Hate and Purity of Ice. So I have 80% cold resist. Then I pop Taste of Hate. Then I have even less damage taken from cold damage, 20% less damage because of the flask, and together with the jewel and the flask, 30% of physical damage will be taken as cold, and I'm very resistant to cold, so I become pretty good against physical damage as well. So defensively this build is pretty okay. And this 1 point, Mind Over Matter, I don't go any mana points in the skill tree, but this 1 point Mind Over Matter makes sure that I have actually more than 5.4k hit points because the damage gets split between my life and my energy shield and mana. Normally I wouldn't recommend it with like I have 200 mana, 1.3k energy shield, so this is like a 1.5k pool and this is a 5k pool. Normally I wouldn't recommend doing this because once this gets depleted you also cannot use your skill, so it becomes quite hard. But because of the nature of this build you freeze a lot, so in I almost never have problems with energy shield of mana to use my skills because I freeze a lot. So when I freeze I don't take damage, so I can just use this as mana, no problem. And when I actually take a lot of damage and this gets like depleted or something, it's like a panic moment, but it's all good because of the Devouring Diadem. So within the next 5 seconds this will be all full, no doubt. So this will be all full again, even with little corpses lying around. This will go instant back to full, no problem. And even if that's not the case or you get hit big again, you still have your Herald of Thunder automatically doing damage and freezing stuff to keep you safe. So that's why in the end I chose to also go for Mind Over Matter. It's maybe a bit late to show you now, but I chose being an Elementalist. In the previous build I was an Occultist, but Elementalist proved to be more damage, more fun, and yeah, just better in general, I believe. This point is really important. You penetrate cold and lightning damage. That's for our heralds and our skills, because we use the heralds. And 25% reduced mana reservation is really nice, because this 25% it stacks with the 20% on the diadem. So we are linking Herald of Thunder and Herald of Ice with 2 support gems. So normally they would like each reserve 25 times 1.3 times 1.5 mana, but these numbers get multiplied by 25, 20, so like by 0.55. So I will turn off my Herald or my Purity of Ice now, if I can. As you can see, this is Herald of Ice and Herald of Thunder with support gems. So that's actually not a lot reserved at all. So that's really nice. So this ascendancy point is really important. This one is nice, damage and AoE. That's really nice. This one is nice, but not mandatory, to be honest. Once you get enough damage, the ring here, Call of the Brotherhood, will make sure you shock while clearing to get Herald of Thunder running, so that's cool. Then it's an like a stalemate between Beacon of Ruin and Paragon of Calamity. I would say if you're still leveling, so you first, the most important thing is Mastermind of Discord. Make sure you go this. So the moment you have Cruel Lab done, you should take this one. But then like, if your build is still struggling a bit, I would recommend Beacon of Ruin, because this makes it really safe. If your Herald of Thunder is going, even though it only hits one target, it still freezes small packs. So it's really nice and fun to see, and it's really safe. But once your build becomes like pretty okay, really decent gear, then I would definitely recommend Paragon of Calamity, because you get Leech and you get more damage and less damage taken depending on the damage of the element that you have taken. The damage you have taken recently of an element. And this note is also why this Jewel and Taste of Hate are well, really liked by me, because let's read. For each element you've been hit by damage of recently, 40% increased damage of that element. Thanks to this Jewel, well, let's forget about Taste of Hate. You can also use the Wise Oak for extra penetration and stuff. That's also really nice. So if you don't want or can't afford Taste of Hate, just go to Wise Oak, also really nice flask. So let's forget about the flask for a second, but just talk about the Jewel. This Jewel is really nice because of this Jewel, a part of physical damage gets converted to cold, and then with this note, you get 40% increased damage, not only when you get hit by cold damage, but also when you get hit by physical damage, because we convert a bit of that to cold. So once your gear gets decked out, this is the point to go. But when you're still like struggling and stuff, this point is also really nice. So that's about it, I think. That was a really long session of me rambling about this build. Yeah, I hope I entertained some of you guys, and some of you guys find this build interesting and just as fun as I do. Before I say goodbye, I would really like to thank Reddit user Keith 2600. When I posted my video last time about the previous version, he contacted me and we worked together on this version, and I must say I had a really nice time chatting with him, and he really did help me out with a lot of nice ideas. So thank you very much, Keith. And to all of you watching, thank you for watching. I will probably see you in a next video. If you have any questions or you want to see me do specific content with this build, just send me a message on YouTube and I will probably reply. Thank you very much for watching, and I will see you guys next time.